They say love is blind, but greed gives you 20/20 vision. Declan Wright thought he was the smartest man in the room. He had just sold his tech startup for $50 million, bought a penthouse in Manhattan, and decided his quiet, modest wife didn't match the aesthetics of his new life. He handed her divorce papers on their anniversary, claiming he needed a woman who understood luxury. He kicked her out while she was secretly carrying his child, replacing her with a younger, flashier mistress. Declan thought he was trading up. He had no idea that the poor woman he'd just discarded was the sole heiress to the Kensington banking empire, a fortune that makes 50 million look like pocket change. And when he finds out, it's going to be too late. The air inside the penthouse on 57th Street was so conditioned it felt sterile. It smelled of cold marble and expensive leather, specifically the Poltrona Frau leather of the couch Declan Wright was currently sitting on. Declan swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler. It was a Macallan 25, a Scotch that cost more per bottle than his wife Sophia used to make in a month as a librarian. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe Nautilus he'd bought yesterday, to celebrate the closing of the deal. $50 million. The sale of his software company, Rightstream, to a conglomerate in Silicon Valley was official. The money was sitting in his J.P. Morgan Chase private client account. He was no longer just a striver. He was a king. The sound of the front door opening broke his reverie. Sophia walked in, carrying 2 brown paper bags from Whole Foods. She looked plain. She was wearing a beige cardigan that had seen better days and comfortable flats. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. There were no diamonds, no designer labels, just Sophia. "Happy anniversary, Declan," she said, a soft smile touching her lips, though she looked tired. She set the bags down on the quartz island. "I bought the ingredients for that saffron risotto you like. I thought we could stay and open a bottle of wine." Declan didn't stand up. He didn't offer to help with the bags. He just stared at her, feeling a cold detachment. 4 years ago, when he was coding in a basement, Sophia's warmth had been a comfort. She had paid the rent. She had made him coffee at 3 a.m. She was the supportive partner. But kings don't need support. They need queens, and Sophia was decidedly a peasant. "We need to talk," Declan said, his voice flat. Sophia froze a bag of arborio rice in her hand. She sensed the shift in the air immediately. She wiped her hands on her jeans and walked into the living room. "Is something wrong? Did the deal fall through?" "The deal is perfect," Declan said, standing up. He walked over to the side table and picked up a thick manila envelope. "My life is perfect. But the picture is off." He tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy slap. "What is this?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Divorce papers." The silence that followed was louder than the city traffic below. Sophia stared at the envelope, then up at him. "It's our 4th anniversary." "I know," Declan said, taking a sip of his scotch. "Look, Sophia, let's be adults about this. We've grown apart. I'm moving in circles now that, well, frankly, you don't fit into. I need someone who can navigate galas, who understands the market, who looks the part." "Looks the part," Sophia repeated, a flash of hurt crossing her grey eyes. "Declan, I've been with you since you had negative equity. I paid for the servers for your first app." "And I'll cut you a check," Declan interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "I'm generous. I'm offering you $100,000. A clean break. You can go back to Ohio or wherever, buy a little house and live your quiet life. It's what you want, anyway." Sophia looked down at her stomach. Her hand hovered over it for a split second, a reflex. She was 12 weeks pregnant. She had planned to tell him tonight over the risotto. She had the ultrasound picture in her purse. "Is there someone else?" Sophia asked quietly. Declan scoffed, but he adjusted his cufflinks, a telltale sign. "Her name is Vanessa. She's an interior designer. She's vibrant. She fits the penthouse, Sophia. She fits me." Vanessa. Sophia knew the type. She had seen Declan liking her photos on Instagram. A woman who was all spray tans, veneers, and borrowed sophistication. "You're throwing away 4 years for a woman you met 3 months ago." "I'm upgrading my life," Declan corrected her coldly. "Sign the papers, Sophia. Don't make this ugly. If you hire a lawyer, I'll bury you in legal fees until that 100 grand is gone. I have the best attorneys in the city. You're a librarian. Do the math." Sophia looked at the man she had loved. She looked at the cruel set of his jaw, the arrogance in his eyes. He thought he was untouchable because he had $50 million. He had no idea. She took a deep breath. The tears she wanted to shed evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve, a trait she had inherited from a man Declan didn't know existed. "Okay," Sophia said. Declan blinked, surprised. "Okay. I'll sign." "Good. Smart girl." He pulled a Mont Blanc pen from his pocket and held it out. Sophia ignored his pen. She reached into her purse past the ultrasound photo and pulled out a cheap ballpoint pen. She flipped to the back page and signed her name. Sophia Marie Wright. "I don't want your money," she said, straightening up. Declan laughed a harsh, barking sound. "Don't be a martyr, Sophia. You have nothing." "I have my dignity," she said. She placed her wedding ring on top of the papers. It was a modest band with a tiny diamond, all he could afford back then. "And you can keep this. It doesn't fit me anymore." She turned and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Declan asked, slightly unnerved by her lack of hysteria. He expected begging. He expected screaming. "Out of your world, Declan," she said without looking back. "Enjoy the view. It's lonely at the top." The door clicked shut. Declan stood alone in the silence. He felt a moment of unease, but he quickly shook it off. He picked up his phone and dialed Vanessa. "It's done, babe," he said, grinning. "Pack your bags. You're moving into the penthouse tonight." It began to rain the moment Sophia stepped out of the lobby of the luxury building. The doorman, a kind older man named Henry, rushed forward with an umbrella. "Mrs. Wright, no luggage?" Henry asked, concerned. He had always liked Sophia. She was the only resident who remembered his grandchildren's names. "Just Sophia Henry," she said, her voice tight. "And I won't be coming back." She walked into the downpour, ignoring the taxis. She needed the cold rain to wash the shock off her skin. She walked 3 blocks to a private spot near Central Park, her hand protective over her lower abdomen. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered. "Your father is not the man I thought he was." She reached into her soaked pocket and pulled out her phone. She scrolled past Declan's name. She scrolled past her local friends. She stopped at a contact simply labeled the chairman. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She hadn't called this number in 7 years, not since she ran away from the crushing expectations of her family, changed her last name, and decided to live a normal life to prove she could survive without the Kensington billions. She pressed call. It rang once. Then a deep, gravelly voice answered, a voice that commanded boardrooms across London, Zurich, and Hong Kong. "Sophia, hello, Daddy," she said, her voice finally breaking. "Where are you?" Arthur Kensington didn't ask how she was. He knew. If she was calling, the experiment was over. New York, 5th and 59th. Are you safe? For now. But I'm done, Dad. I'm done playing ordinary. There was a pause on the line. Did he hurt you, that boy you ran off with? He divorced me, Sophia said, the bitterness rising like bile. He traded me in for a newer model. He thinks I'm a charity case. A low, dangerous chuckle rumbled through the phone. It was the sound Arthur Kensington made before he acquired a hostile company and dismantled it piece by piece. He doesn't know. No, he thinks I'm Sophia the librarian. Stay there, Arthur commanded. I'm in London, but I'm sending the jet. It will be at Teterboro in 2 hours. The car is 5 minutes away. And Sophia. Yes. Welcome back to the family. 20 minutes later, a phantom black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled up to the curb. It was so polished it reflected the city lights like a mirror. A driver in a pristine suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. Kensington, the driver said, bowing his head slightly. Mr. Kensington instructed me to take you to the Four Seasons until the plane is ready. We have clothes waiting for you. Sophia slid into the back seat. The interior smelled of real wealth, silent, powerful, and assured. It was a stark contrast to Declan's flashy, new money penthouse. That was loud luxury. This was quiet power. As the car pulled away, Sophia looked out the window. She saw Declan's building retreating into the distance. She wasn't just sad anymore. She was angry. Declan had humiliated her. He had dismissed her love as a weakness. He had cast aside their child before he even knew it existed. He wanted a woman who understood business, who understood power driver. Sophia said, her voice hardening. Yes, ma'am. Do we still have the acquisition team on retainer in New York? Kensington Holdings always has a team in New York, ma'am. Good, she said, wiping the last raindrop from her cheek. Get me the portfolio on Right Stream. I want to know who bought it, what the terms are, and exactly how liquid Declan Wright actually is. Very good, ma'am. Sophia leaned back. She touched her stomach again. He wanted a divorce, she whispered to the empty car. I'm going to give him a war. 2 months later, Declan Wright was living the dream, or so he told himself. The penthouse was now filled with Vanessa's touch. Everything was leopard print gold leaf and loud, abstract art. Vanessa herself was loud. She laughed too loudly at parties, drank too much champagne, and spent money at a rate that even Declan found alarming. Babe, look, Vanessa squealed, bursting into his home office. She was holding a tiny dog in a designer carrier. It's a teacup Pomeranian. It cost $12,000. Isn't he cute? I named him Gucci. Declan rubbed his temples. He was trying to review his investment portfolio. Vanessa, did you use the black card? Duh, she said, rolling her eyes. You said you were rich, didn't you? Don't be stingy, Dec. It's bad for your image. She pranced out, leaving a trail of heavy floral perfume. Declan sighed. The honeymoon phase had lasted exactly 3 weeks. Vanessa wasn't just vibrant. She was vapid. She didn't understand his business. She didn't cook. She didn't listen. When he tried to talk about the volatility of the crypto markets, she would yawn and ask if they could go to St. Bart's. And then there were the expenses. His $50 million was substantial, but taxes took nearly half. Then he bought the penthouse for $8 million. The cars, a McLaren for him, a G-Wagon for her. The jewelry, the constant parties. He had burned through $6 million in cash in 2 months. It's fine, he muttered to himself. I just need to get the next venture going. He was working on a new AI project. He needed venture capital. He had a meeting set up tomorrow with a representative from Aurora Capital, a massive European investment firm that was looking to expand into American tech. If he landed this deal, he'd be back on top. He'd show everyone, even the ghost of Sophia, that sometimes haunted the quiet corners of his mind, that he was a genius. His phone buzzed. It was a reminder for the meeting. Location: the Plaza Hotel, Oak Room. Meeting with Mr. Grant Sterling. Wait, no. Mr. Grant Black. He had to check the name. He didn't know the rep. Declan stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the city. "I have everything," he said aloud, trying to convince the reflection in the glass. Somewhere in London, inside a boardroom that was older than the United States, a woman in a tailored Chanel suit sat at the head of a mahogany table. Her hair was cut in a sharp, chic bob. She wore diamonds that were tasteful but terrifyingly expensive. Sophia Kensington looked at the dossier in front of her. It was labeled Project Right. "He's meeting with Aurora Capital tomorrow?" she asked the man standing to her right. This was Grant, her father's most trusted advisor, and a man who had been in love with Sophia since boarding school. "Yes, Sophia," Grant said. "He's desperate for seed money. His burn rate is unsustainable. Aurora Capital is a subsidiary of Kensington Holdings, isn't it? Wholly owned, but he doesn't know that. We use it for discreet acquisitions." Sophia smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Grant, I want you to take the meeting, but I'll be listening in." "And the objective?" Grant asked. "Give him the money," Sophia said. Grant raised an eyebrow. "Give it to him. I thought we were crushing him." "We are," Sophia said, resting her hand on her slightly showing baby bump concealed beneath the desk. "But you don't crush a man by starving him. You crush him by giving him exactly what he wants, with terms he doesn't bother to read, because he's too arrogant to think he can fail." She closed the file. "Make him sign the ironclad clause, Grant. Leverage everything. His penthouse, his cars, his remaining cash. If he misses a single milestone, we take it all." The Oak Room at the Plaza Hotel was the kind of place where deals were whispered, not shouted. The wood paneling was dark, the lighting was low, and the waiters moved like ghosts. Declan Wright sat across from Grant Price. Grant was a man who looked like he had been born in a bespoke suit. He was handsome in a sharp, terrifying way, with ice-blue eyes that seemed to scan Declan's soul and find it wanting. Declan, by contrast, was vibrating with nervous energy. He had ordered a sparkling water, but he was dying for a drink. "Mr. Wright," Grant said, his voice smooth and cultured with a faint British accent. "I've reviewed the proposal for sentient AI. It's ambitious. It's revolutionary," Declan corrected him, leaning forward. "We're talking about predictive algorithms that don't just analyze market trends, they create them. I just need the capital to scale the servers. The code is 90% there." 90%? Grant repeated. He tapped a finger on the leather folder in front of him. "In my experience, the last 10% is where the bodies are buried." Declan laughed nervously. "No bodies here. Just brilliance." Grant didn't smile. He opened the folder and slid a thick document across the table. "Aurora Capital is prepared to offer you the seed round. $20 million. Declan's heart skipped a beat. 20 million. He had only asked for 10. This would solve everything. He could pay off the credit card bills Vanessa had racked up, finish the renovations on the penthouse, and still have enough to launch. "However," Grant continued, "Aurora is an aggressive firm. We don't do handouts. We do partnerships based on results." "I can get results," Declan said, reaching for the pen. "Read the addendum on page 40. "Declan," Grant said softly. Declan flipped to the back. The text was dense, but the gist was clear. It was a milestone forfeiture clause. If the prototype does not pass the Turing 7 benchmark within 90 days, Aurora Capital reserves the right to immediate repayment of the principal plus 20% interest. In the event of liquidity shortage, Aurora Capital assumes power of attorney over all personal and professional assets listed in Schedule B to satisfy the debt. Schedule B listed everything: right stream intellectual property, the penthouse on 57th Street, his stock portfolio, even his McLaren. This puts everything I own on the line," Declan said, hesitating. "Only if you fail," Grant said, taking a sip of his tea. "You just told me you were a genius, Declan. You told me the code is 90% done. Surely 90 days is enough for a man of your caliber to finish the job." Grant's eyes locked onto Declan's. It was a challenge, a direct strike at his ego. If Declan walked away, he admitted he wasn't sure. If he signed, he proved he was the alpha. "Besides," Grant added, checking his watch, "I have a meeting with a young developer from MIT in an hour. He has a similar project. If you're not confident—" "I'll sign," Declan snapped. He scribbled his signature aggressively. He felt a rush of adrenaline. He had $20 million coming. He was invincible. Just then his phone rang loudly, shattering the quiet atmosphere of the Oak Room. A pop song ringtone blared. It was Vanessa. Declan fumbled to silence it, his face flushing red. Apologies." "Take it," Grant said, waving a hand dismissively. "Business partners should be transparent," Declan answered. "Vanessa, I'm in a meeting. Dec." "You have to come to Barney's right now," Vanessa's voice screeched through the speaker. "My card got declined. It's so embarrassing. The sales lady is looking at me like I'm a pauper." "Vanessa, I transferred $5,000 yesterday," Declan hissed. "That was for the spa. This is for the gala tonight. I need a dress." "Fix it, Declan." She hung up. Declan looked up to see Grant watching him with an expression of mild amusement mixed with pity. "Trouble in paradise?" Grant asked. "Just logistics," Declan lied, sweating. "Well," Grant stood up, picking up the contract. "The funds will be wired within the hour. The clock starts now, Declan. 90 days. Don't disappoint us." Grant walked out of the hotel and climbed into the back of the waiting Rolls-Royce, the same one Sophia had used 2 months ago. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "He signed," Grant said. "Did he read the clause?" Sophia's voice came through clear and cold. He glanced at it. His ego did the rest. "Good," Sophia said. "Let him spend the money. Let him feel safe." And Grant, "Yes, make sure the glitch in his server architecture is ready to deploy on day 89. 3 months had passed. New York City was draped in snow, but inside the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the atmosphere was warm and dripping with opulence. It was the night of the Winter Solstice Charity Ball, the most exclusive event of the season. Tickets were $10,000 a plate. Declan Wright stood near the bar, adjusting his tuxedo. It was a Tom Ford, but it felt tight around the collar. The last 90 days had been a nightmare. The $20 million from Aurora Capital was almost gone. $5 million went into the business, servers, coders, data mining. But 15 million had evaporated into the black hole of his luxury life. Vanessa had insisted on a summer home in the Hamptons, even though it was winter. She had demanded a new wardrobe. She had thrown parties every weekend to network, which mostly involved her friends drinking his expensive wine and trashing his carpets. And the project? The AI was lagging. There were bugs he couldn't fix. The deadline was tomorrow. He had 24 hours to show a working prototype to Aurora Capital, or he lost everything. He was here tonight to find a backup investor, a lifeline. "Babe, stop frowning," Vanessa said, appearing at his elbow. She was wearing a dress that was sheer sequined and entirely inappropriate for a black tie event. It screamed, "Look at me," in all the wrong ways. "You look like you're at a funeral." "I'm trying to focus, Vanessa," Declan snapped. "I need to meet Arthur Kensington." "Who?" "Arthur Kensington, the banking tycoon. Rumor has it he's here tonight. If I can get 5 minutes with him, I can refinance the Aurora deal." "Boring," Vanessa huffed, sipping her champagne. "Oh, look, there's a photographer. Come on, let's get a selfie for the grid." "No." Declan pulled his arm away. "Go sit down." He scanned the room. The Temple of Dendur was filled with the elite of the world. Politicians, oil barons, tech giants. Suddenly, the room went quiet. The murmurs stopped. The crowd parted down the center like the Red Sea. A woman was entering the hall. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her body and flowed into a train that shimmered like the night sky. Around her neck sat a sapphire necklace that was likely worth more than Declan's entire company. Her hair was styled in elegant waves, framing a face that was striking regal and terrifyingly familiar. Declan dropped his glass. It shattered on the stone floor, but no one noticed. They were all looking at her. "Who is that?" someone whispered nearby. "That's the hostess," another replied. "That's the Kensington heiress." Declan felt the blood drain from his face. He squinted. The woman turned slightly. She was holding her stomach. She was visibly, undeniably pregnant. 6, maybe 7 months along. She looked healthier than he had ever seen her. Her skin glowed. She carried herself with a posture that commanded respect. It was Sophia. "No," Declan whispered, his knees shaking. That's impossible." Sophia walked through the crowd, flanked by security and Grant Price. She nodded graciously to the guests, smiling that warm, soft smile, but there was steel behind it now. She stopped in the center of the room to grab a microphone. "Welcome, everyone," Sophia said. Her voice, amplified by the speakers, was confident and melodic. "Thank you for joining the Kensington Foundation tonight. As you know, my father Arthur has stepped down as chairman and I have taken over the family operations." Family operations. Chairman. Declan felt like he had been punched in the gut. Sophia. His Sophia. The woman who clipped coupons for pasta sauce. The woman he had kicked out because she wasn't luxury enough. She was a Kensington. The Kensingtons were royalty. They were the money behind the money. "Oh my God," Vanessa said, chewing her gum loudly. "Is that your ex, the librarian chick?" Declan didn't answer. He started walking. He had to talk to her. He had to explain. If she was a Kensington, she could save him. She would save him. She loved him, right? She was carrying his child, although he hadn't known she was pregnant. When he kicked her out, the math was hitting him now. "Sophia," Declan called out, pushing past a waiter. He broke through the line of people. Sophia froze. She handed the microphone to Grant and slowly turned her head. Her grey eyes landed on Declan. There was no love in them. There was no anger. There was only the cold indifference of a glacier. Sophia. Declan gasped, reaching her. He was sweating, his tie crooked. Sophia, it's me. The room watched in silence. I know who you are, Sophia said calmly. You look incredible, Declan stammered. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? Sophia tilted her head. That I had money. Was my love not enough? Declan, did I need a bank balance to be worthy of your respect? No, Look, we made a mistake. Declan said, his voice rising in desperation. We can fix this. The baby, is that? He pointed to her stomach. Sophia placed a protective hand over her bump. This is my child, a Kensington, and he will never know a father who values a balance sheet over a human heart. I'm the father, Declan shouted. You can't keep him from me. Security, Sophia said softly. Two massive men in black suits stepped forward, blocking Declan's path. Sophia, please, Declan yelled as they grabbed his arms. I'm in trouble. I made a bad deal with Aurora Capital. They're going to take everything. You have to help me. Sophia signaled the guards to pause. She stepped closer, leaning in, so only Declan could hear. You want help with Aurora Capital? She whispered. Yes, please. Hope flared in Declan's chest. I am Aurora Capital, Sophia said. The color vanished from Declan's world. What? I own it. She smiled, and it was the most dangerous thing he had ever seen. And Declan, your 90 days are up at midnight. I suggest you check your server logs. I hear there's a critical failure in your code. She turned back to the crowd. Please remove this trespasser. He's ruining the ambience. As the guards dragged Declan away, kicking and screaming, he saw Vanessa standing there. She looked from Declan to the guards, and then to Sophia. Vanessa turned her back on Declan and walked toward the open bar. Declan was thrown out the side door into the snow. He scrambled for his phone to check his servers. Alert, critical system failure. Code corruption detected. Backups deleted. His phone buzzed. An email from Aurora Capital. Subject, notice of default and asset seizure. Attachment eviction. Notice, 57th St. Penthouse. Declan Wright sat in the slush, staring at the phone, as the muffled sound of applause drifted out from the warm golden hall where his wife, the billionaire heiress, was celebrating his destruction. The morning after the gala, the sun rose over Manhattan with a blinding, indifferent brightness. Declan Wright did not see it from a penthouse view. He saw it through the windshield of his McLaren, parked in a 24-hour garage in Hell's Kitchen. He hadn't slept. He drove back to the building on 57th Street at 7:00 a.m., hoping to salvage something: his clothes, his watch collection, his dignity. When he arrived, the key fob didn't work. The heavy glass doors remained shut. Henry! Declan banged on the glass. Let me in! Henry, the doorman, who had once held the umbrella for a weeping Sophia, looked through the glass. He didn't smile. He didn't rush. He simply held up a clipboard and pointed to a team of movers who were already in the lobby. Declan forced the door open when a resident exited. He sprinted to the elevator, jamming the button for the penthouse. When the doors opened, chaos greeted him. It wasn't the movers. It was Vanessa. She was running through the apartment like a hurricane. She had 2 Louis Vuitton suitcases open on the floor and was indiscriminately sweeping things into them. Silverware, his cologne, the iPad Pro, even the decorative vases. "What are you doing?" Declan screamed, stepping over a pile of clothes. Vanessa spun around. She looked haggard, her mascara smeared. "I'm taking what I'm owed, Declan." "You're broke," The news is everywhere. Rightstream is insolvent. They're freezing the accounts. Put that down. That's my property. It's the bank's property, now, Vanessa yelled back. She grabbed a Cartier watch from the dresser, a gift he had bought for himself. And since you wasted 3 months of my life, I'm taking this as severance. You said you loved me. Declan whispered the reality of his life, crumbling around him. I loved the lifestyle, Vanessa scoffed, zipping the bag. You think I wanted to hear you talk about code all day? You're boring, Declan. And without money, you're just a sad little man who left a good wife because he had a midlife crisis at 30. She hauled the bags towards the door. By the way, I called the landlord. He's changing the locks at noon. I'd grab a coat if I were you. It's cold outside. Vanessa stormed out, leaving Declan standing in the ruins of his short-lived empire. He walked to the window. Down on the street, he saw a tow truck backing up toward his McLaren. A Repo team. Aurora Capital moves fast. Declan sat down on the floor. He had no wife, no child, no company, no home. And as of this morning, he had exactly $84 in his pocket. He reached for his phone to call his lawyer, but the screen was black. Service had been cut. For the first time in his life, Declan Wright cried. Not for Sophia, but for the realization that he was the villain of his own story. And villains, as he was learning, don't get happy endings. They get evicted. 2 weeks later, Declan stood in line at a soup kitchen in the Bronx. He was wearing a thrift store jacket that smelled of mothballs. He hadn't shaved in 10 days. He had tried to get a job. He had applied to tech firms, startups, even help desk roles. But the name Declan Wright was poison. Sophia hadn't just taken his money. She had destroyed his reputation. The industry rumors were that he had defrauded investors, that his code was stolen, that he was unstable. No one would hire him. As he shuffled forward for a bowl of stew, he saw a discarded newspaper on a table. The headline grabbed him by the throat. Kensington heiress gives birth to son Leo. The banking empire has a new heir. Sophia Kensington, CEO of Kensington Holdings, welcomes a healthy baby boy. There was a photo. Sophia looking radiant in a hospital bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a white blanket. Declan stared at the blurry image of the boy. Leo. His son. He reached out to touch the paper, his dirty fingernail resting on the baby's face. A surge of fierce, protective love hit him, an emotion he hadn't expected. He had thought of the pregnancy as a problem before. Now it was the only real thing in the world. "Hey, buddy, you moving or what?" the man behind him grumbled. Declan grabbed the paper and shoved it into his jacket. "I'm moving," Declan said. His voice sounded different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by gravel and grit. He walked out of the shelter into the cold rain. He wasn't going to die here. He wasn't going to rot in the gutter while his son grew up thinking his father was a monster. He needed to change, not just his bank account, but his soul. He walked toward a construction site he had passed earlier. They were looking for day laborers, cash in hand. No questions asked. Hard, brutal work. Declan walked up to the foreman, a giant man named Sal. "I need work," Declan said. Sal looked at Declan's soft computer programmer hands. "You ever hold a shovel, kid?" "No," Declan said, "but I'll learn. It's minimum wage. You break your back, you don't complain." "I won't complain," Declan said, looking at the skyline where his son was sleeping in a golden cradle. "I just need a chance." Sal handed him a hard hat. Start digging. 4 years later. The man known as Dan inhaled deeply, tasting the metallic tang of oil and gasoline, a scent that now felt more honest and familiar than the faint sandalwood and expensive leather of his previous life. He was working under the hood of a massive Ford F-150 in a garage called Sal's Auto in a gritty corner of Queens. The sun, when it bothered to shine, found its way in through dirty skylights, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Declan Wright was unrecognizable. The soft manicured hands of the millionaire coder were gone, replaced by thick, calloused palms permanently scored with grease and minor scars. He had gained 20 pounds of hard muscle-hauling equipment and wrestling with engines. His face was leaner, shadowed by the perpetual stubble he no longer cared to shave perfectly. The arrogance that had once defined his posture had been sanded down by 4 years of minimum-wage labor, long hours, and the quiet, crushing loneliness of true loss. His identity was protected by his obscurity. The tech world had forgotten Declan Wright. He was simply Dan the mechanic, reliable, quiet, and fiercely focused. The difference in his life was not just physical, it was internal. He had not touched a line of code in years. His only ritual was the weekly trip to the local credit union, where he deposited a small percentage of his cash earnings into a savings account he never accessed. The account was marked only with the initials LK. He read the business papers now, not for profit, but for news of Kensington holdings. He tracked Sophia's career, the relentless, brilliant growth of the empire under her command. He also tracked the development of their son Leo, through society snapshots of charity events or candid paparazzi shots of park visits. Leo had his mother's sharp grey eyes and Declan's uncontrollable mess of brown curly hair. He was 4 years old now. Declan never considered contacting them. He knew his punishment was exile. He was not asking for forgiveness, only redemption, and redemption, he realized, was found not in a bank vault, but in self-imposed suffering and honest work. He closed the hood of the truck, wiping a sheen of sweat and grease from his forehead with the back of his hand. "All done, Mrs. Higgins," he called out, collecting the crumpled bills she handed him. As the customer pulled out a sleek obsidian-black Mercedes-Benz S-Class, a car that screamed power glided into the gas station across the street. Declan froze. His eyes were drawn not to the car, but to the woman who emerged from the passenger side. She was draped in a floor-length white coat and oversized designer sunglasses, her hair perfectly coiffed, but the predatory elegance, the theatricality was unmistakable. Vanessa. A cold knot tightened in Declan's stomach. He hadn't seen her since she had abandoned him in his shattered penthouse. He quickly grabbed a rag and walked casually toward a discarded tire pile, pretending to sort the rubber so he could listen. Vanessa wasn't there for gas. She was arguing with a hulking man in a custom suit who stepped out of the driver's side. Declan recognized him instantly from business profiles. Kyle, the formidable head of security for Victor Draven, the corporate raider currently trying to dismantle Kensington Holdings. "The schedule is set." Cale's voice was a low growl, clearly audible in the quiet street. "The nanny takes the brat to the Central Park Zoo every Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. That's tomorrow." "Are you certain the security detail is light?" Vanessa hissed nervously, checking her expensive watch. "I can't afford to get caught. Victor promised me $5 million for this. $5 million. You worry about grabbing the boy when the distraction goes off. We have the service van ready, clean plates, everything," Kyle said with chilling confidence. A quick drop a call to the CEO, and by Wednesday, Sophia Kensington signs over the European assets. If we have her son, she signs. Good, Vanessa said, a poisonous satisfaction coloring her tone. It's what the rich deserve for thinking they're untouchable. She snapped her fingers. I still hate that she got to keep everything. This is payback. The words hit Declan like a physical blow. Not only was the mother of his child under threat, but his own son was the leverage. And the woman who had helped destroy Declan was now helping destroy his family. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving Declan standing alone, the grease rag hanging forgotten in his hand. Leo, his son. The fierce, protective instinct that surged through him was immediate, primal, and overwhelming. It wasn't the impulse of a white-collar criminal trying to scheme his way out of trouble. It was the raw, untamed drive of a cornered animal defending its young. He looked at his watch. Monday evening. Less than 20 hours. He could call the police. He could call Grant Price Sophia's advisor. But his word was worthless. He was Dan the mechanic, an unknown with a past that made him look like a disgruntled ex or a desperate conspiracy theorist. By the time they elevated his warning, Kyle and Vanessa would have the boy halfway to the Canadian border. I have to stop it myself. He walked back into the garage office, grabbed his keys, and slid his heavy-duty wrench a 24-inch length of tempered steel into the waist of his jeans. It was the only weapon he possessed, and it felt heavier than all the gold he used to own. His plan was simple, reckless, and driven purely by adrenaline. He knew Central Park's service entrances from his old jogging routes. He knew where the cameras were. He wouldn't wear a disguise. He would use the invisibility of his current life. No one looks twice at a guy in a dirty hoodie and construction boots. He was going to save his son, even if it cost him the quiet, fragile redemption he had spent 4 years earning. The next day, Tuesday, 4:45 p.m. Declan was positioned behind a towering stack of hay bales near the small children's zoo at the park's edge. His heart hammered in his chest, a frantic, painful drumbeat. He saw them, Leo laughing as he pointed at the exotic birds, his nanny Elena, and 2 large, watchful bodyguards from Kensington Security. At 1:58 p.m., precisely on schedule, chaos erupted. Not near the penguins, but near the public restrooms, a diversion. A flash of orange smoke filled the air, and someone started screaming. The crowd instinctively surged away from the disturbance. The 2 Kensington guards moved professionally. One stayed with Leo, the other moved to intercept the distraction. But the real attack came from the crowd. A medical transport van, marked with fake hospital logos, screeched to a halt at a nearby service entrance. A woman in a realistic paramedic uniform, pushing a stretcher, rushed toward Leo. It was Vanessa. "Out of the way, emergency!" she shrieked. Before the remaining bodyguard could react, 2 men dressed as EMTs descended. Kyle, leading the charge, tackled the guard. The other attacker deployed a burst of potent pepper spray directly into the guard's face. Elena screamed, pulling Leo close. Vanessa, throwing off the paramedic helmet, lunged. "Come here, sweetie. It's okay," she crooned, pulling the terrified, struggling boy toward the waiting van. Declan didn't think. He acted. He burst from behind the hay bales, a blur of grease and fury. He didn't run like a pampered ex-CEO. He ran like the mechanic who moved engines for a living. He focused on the man holding the van door open. Thwack! The wrench connected with the man's forearm, a sickening sound that echoed over the screams of the crowd. The man howled, dropping the taser he was holding, and stumbled backward. Vanessa shrieked, spinning around, her eyes widening in genuine terror as she recognized the man who was supposed to be a forgotten ghost. "You—" she gasped, dropping Leo's arm. Let him go, Vanessa!" Declan's voice was a primal roar, unrecognizable even to himself. Kyle, recovering from the initial disruption, saw Declan and drew a knife. A flash of steel in the weak winter sun. Declan, moving on pure instinct, dodged the initial slash that aimed for his throat, but the blade grazed his forearm. A searing pain shot up his arm, and blood instantly bloomed dark red against the grey sleeve of his hoodie. Ignoring the pain, Declan used his weight and momentum, slamming into Kale, driving the seasoned professional back into the brick wall of the building. He delivered a rapid, brutal series of blows, no fancy fighting, just the desperate, clumsy violence of a man who had everything to lose. Kale dropped to the ground, stunned. Declan scrambled up, gasping the adrenaline, momentarily cancelling the throbbing pain in his arm. He turned to Vanessa. She was frozen, horrified, clutching a small, discarded radio. Leo was staggering, crying uncontrollably, burying his face in his hands. "Give me my son!" Declan rasped, his eyes burning with an intensity that terrified Vanessa more than Kyle's knife. "They'll kill me, Draven will. I'll kill you right here if you don't hand him over." Declan stepped toward her. Vanessa, realizing the police sirens were wailing closer and that her accomplice was incapacitated, shoved Leo toward Declan and bolted running blindly into the chaos of the panicked crowd. Declan caught the small boy, pulling him close, shielding his head against his chest. "It's okay," Declan whispered, tears of relief mingling with the blood on his cheek. "I've got you. You're safe." Leo clung to him, trembling, his small voice muffled against the grease-stained hoodie. "Who are you?" Declan held him tighter, fighting back a wave of nausea from the pain. I'm a friend. A friend of your mummy's." Uniformed police swarmed the area. Weapons were drawn. Declan slowly knelt, raising his good hand high, keeping Leo pressed against his chest. "Don't shoot," he said, his voice calmer than he felt. "He's safe." The cell. Declan refused treatment. He refused to give his name. He sat on the metal bench in the holding cell of the 19th precinct, staring at the bandage an indifferent EMT had slapped on his arm. He had protected Leo. He had done the right thing. That was enough. He didn't want a reward. He didn't want to complicate Sophia's life. He was prepared to take the assault charge and disappear back into the anonymity of Queens. Then the door opened and the air shifted. Sophia Kensington walked in, flanked by Grant Price and a phalanx of silent, furious-looking bodyguards. Her face was alabaster pale, her eyes wide with shock and residual terror. "Where is he? Where is Leo?" she demanded, her voice strained. A detective ushered her toward the back. Declan heard the muffled sobs of reunion, the sound of a mother who had almost lost everything. After a long, silent 15 minutes, the cell door clanged open, and Sophia stepped inside. She was wearing a tailored charcoal suit that looked expensive enough to buy Declan's old garage. Her posture was that of a CEO, but her eyes were those of a distraught mother. She looked down at him, her grey eyes travelling over his blood-stained hoodie, the grease on his fingers, the makeshift bandage. "Sir," she began, her voice professional but shaky, "I don't know who you are, but you saved my son. I want to give you whatever you want. A reward, a job." Declan slowly lifted his head and looked at her. Sophia stopped talking. The air caught in her throat. The colour drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking fragile and exposed. "Declan," she whispered, the sound a mix of disbelief, heartbreak, and dawning horror. He stood up slowly, pain lancing through his arm, but he ignored it. He was no longer the arrogant boy who demanded a divorce. He was just a man, "Hello, Sophia," he said, his voice soft, tired. "He's a good kid. He looks like you." The sight of him ragged and humble, standing in a jail cell after performing the ultimate sacrifice, broke the dam of her 4 years of guarded fury. You saved him," she stammered, tears welling up. "I'm his father," Declan said, simply the anchor line of his redemption. "It's what we're supposed to do." He walked toward the cell door. "I'm not asking for anything, Sophia. I don't want your money. I don't want forgiveness. I wanted to make sure he was safe. I should go." "Wait," Sophia commanded, but the tone was pleading, not authoritarian. She looked at the blood soaking the bandage. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," Declan said, thinking of the 4 years of soul-crushing humiliation. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She reached out, not with a checkbook, but with a cautious hand, and placed it gently on his uninjured shoulder. "Leo keeps asking about the brave man. He needs to know who you are." Declan stopped, turning back fully. "He thinks I'm a friend." "Maybe," Sophia said, her eyes searching his, looking past the grease and the grime to the man she had loved and the father he had become. "Maybe we can start there." He looked down at her hand on his shoulder. It was a bridge not to her fortune, but to their son. Declan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Sophia." And that is the incredible story of Declan Wright. He went from the penthouse to the pavement, losing $50 million, to learn the one lesson money can't buy character. He thought he wanted a queen, but he didn't realize that to be a king, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything for the people you love. What do you think? Did Declan deserve a second chance? Or should Sophia have let him walk away? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama and redemption, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.